Chapter 4, Destruction's Light, is probably my favorite chapter in all of Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frostmaiden. Now that's not because it fits in very well with Adventure, because it really doesn't. It's not because it's easy to run or it makes a lot of sense, because it sort of doesn't. It doesn't work unless you do a lot of work with it and to make it work. But it's because it's an unique idea that's both chaotic, exciting, exhilarating, and with very large and meaningful consequences for not only the party and the players, but the whole of Icewind Dale and the campaign. So in this video, I'll be focusing on how you can make Chapter 4 Destruction's Light into the fun and unique D&D experience it's supposed to be, while also hopefully making it more manageable for you to run, because it really is one of the most complicated chapters to run in the book, if not the most complicated chapter to run. First off, my name is Vellynne with Eventyr Games, the adamantine best-selling publisher of DM's resources, including DM's resources for Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frostmaiden. What I'll be going over in this video is, of course, how we can make Chapter 4, Destruction's Light, more fun and exciting for your players, as well as more manageable for you, the DM, to run. So the first thing I'll do is that I'll give an overview of the chapter, what's going on, and how is the chapter supposed to run. Then I'll go into travel times and resting and the rules for that, because these are, of course, very important and will probably need to be changed in order for the chapter to really work as it is intended. Then I'll take a look at Vellynne's aid, how she can maybe help the characters chase down the dragon or improve the travel times and their resting opportunities. And I'll also go into the actual journey to 10 towns, how the characters can get off the mountain and across the tundra to 10 towns. Then we'll be going into the journey inside 10 towns or from town to town, where there's also some other stuff that can happen before we finally get to the characters catching up to the dragon and how that could possibly look. Then there's, of course, fighting the dragon, the big finale, the showdown we've been looking for. And at the very end of the video, we'll also be going over the aftermath, what's left, as the dragon has probably destroyed at least some of 10 towns before the characters manage to stop it. The premise of the chapter is fairly simple. The characters have to chase down the charging dragon as it's flying towards 10 towns, and then from town to town destroying them in order before it flies back to Sunblight Fortress. So the character's goal is fairly simple: catch the dragon as quickly as possible to save as many lives in 10 towns as possible. Now, to catch up with the dragon, the characters have to first get off the mountain, then they have to cross the tundra, and then they have to travel from town to town in 10 towns, where there are various encounters that can happen, and perhaps also other stuff they need to attend to if they need to get fresh sled dogs or gather equipment or set up defenses and so on. Finally, we have this showdown with the dragon as the characters catch up with it. There can be multiple showdowns, only one showdown, but probably, hopefully, a final showdown where the characters get to defeat the dragon and become heroes of 10 towns, or heroes of the piles of rubble that are left of 10 towns, depending on how well they fared in actually chasing down the dragon. And that, of course, leads us to the next thing I'll discuss in this video, and probably the most important thing we'll discuss in this video, which is travel times, because as written, the chapter actually doesn't work. To explain what I mean when I say that the chapter doesn't work as written, we'll have to pull up a table that I've created for the DM's resources of the dragon's travel times, as well as the rules for travel. What you can see here is that if the characters are traveling as the book dictates, they will only arrive in Goodmead or Dugan's Hole after around 14 hours of travel, which of course is much too late to actually catch up with the dragon. If they head directly for Easthaven instead, they will arrive there after roughly around 16 hours, which is also too late to catch up with it. They won't be able to catch up with the dragon in Caer Dineval or Caer Konig either, because the dragon doesn't stay there for very long and just quickly destroys those towns before moving on to Tourmaline. Now, if the characters realize this, they can opt to travel directly to Tourmaline. If the characters are traveling to Tourmaline by the fastest route possible and without resting along the way, they will be able to catch the dragon in Tourmaline. But there's an issue here. The book tells us that sled dogs have to rest 1 hour for each hour of travel. If we're going by these rules, sled dogs are actually as slow as normal humanoids wearing snowshoes, which means that all travel times are essentially doubled. So it's not going to take 20 hours to get to Tourmaline, it's going to take 40 hours. So if we're going strictly by the book and using the rules they have for sled dogs, including the travel pace they have there, the only real option for the characters is to head directly for Brynchanda and doing so with minimal rest so they can make a final stand against the dragon there. They simply have no opportunity to catch up with the dragon in any other town than Brynchanda. And I don't think that's the way the chapter is supposed to work, because if it was, why are we giving descriptions of exactly how it's going to destroy this or that town, or how many hours it takes it to get from here to there, and so on. Now there are of course other ways the characters could catch up to the dragon faster. This could mean finding a portal that can take them there. It could be having a scroll of teleportation, a carpet of flying, or getting a lift from perhaps Aveo this ancient dragon that has an unpronounceable name, or something akin to that. The fix that I'm proposing instead is that you simply double the travel times as they're listed in the book. This is something that I've gone over in previous videos, but I have a table here that you can see that shows what I mean by that, and also decide that what's in there about sled dogs having to rest every hour for every hour of travel simply means that they can travel for 12 hours before they have to rest for 12 hours, which is also both more realistic and will make it more possible for the chapter to work as intended. Because if we follow these rules, the characters will have an opportunity to catch up with the dragon in Easthaven if they make good speed and head out immediately. And if they take a long rest before chasing after the dragon or clear out Sunby Fortress or what have you, they will probably miss the dragon in Easthaven but have a chance to catch up with it in Tourmaline if they make good speed from there. So that's the overall suggestion to really make the chapter actually work. Consider doing something about travel times, doubling the speed, and changing how the sled dogs have to rest, or giving the characters an alternate way to travel to 10 towns. Another thing we have to consider is resting. Now, as we mentioned, the sled dogs may need to rest, but the characters may also need to rest, especially if you followed my advice from the previous video and had the dragon be released during a battle inside Sunby Fortress, because the characters are likely to have spent a lot of resources, hit points and so on, and may feel that they need a long rest before heading out after the dragon. This is also how we keep the difficult decision even after the characters have already dealt with Sunby Fortress, as they're going to have to decide whether they're going to spend 8 hours taking a long rest or not. Now, resting wouldn't of course be an issue if the characters could just head out on a dog sled and rest along the way. Whether or not they can do that, rest while the dogs are pulling the sled, is up to you. Now, it realistically makes sense that it'll be difficult to rest because they'll have to get off at points to go around obstacles or down cliff sides, across streams and so on. But if you want to be lenient and give them this opportunity to rest up, you can easily decide that it's possible for the characters to get a long rest while traveling on a sled. Whichever way you do it, I do suggest that you allow the characters to take short rests and also get enough sleep to not gain exhaustion while they're being carted along by sled dogs. Another thing we need to note about rest is that the dogs of course need to have rest as well. If the dogs have already just taken the characters all the way to Sunblight from 10 towns, they may have traveled for 8, 10 or 12 hours already and may not be in any condition to take the characters back to 10 towns immediately to chase after the dragon. This could be a way that the characters decided, okay, we need to rest because our dogs need to rest as well. Or it could be an opportunity for us to introduce Vellynne and actually make her aid very, very important, which brings us to the next point, which is Vellynne's aid. As it's described in the book, Vellynne shows up with fresh sled dogs, which is something the characters may need at this point to actually get back to 10 towns. Now, this isn't a bad idea. It's a good way to give the characters a chance to catch up with the dragons if they don't have sled dogs on their own, or if their sled dogs are already tired once they're heading out to chase after the dragon. But there's also another way to do it. Instead of just having fresh sled dogs, we can have Vellynne either have the means to create zombified sled dogs or already have zombified sled dogs ready. A sled pulled by zombies isn't faster than an ordinary sled, but it does have one advantage, and that is that the zombies don't need to rest. Now, this does a few things that I think is cool. First, the characters actually need Vellynne to go with them. They can't just take her sled and her sled dogs, because she needs to be there to command the zombies to actually pull them towards 10 towns. Secondly, it gives us another opportunity to create a difficult decision for the characters, as they must decide whether or not they can stomach being surrounded by zombies. And if Vellynne doesn't already have the zombies ready, if they're willing to perhaps even sacrifice their own tired and exhausted sled dogs so that Vellynne can make them into zombies, or let her make zombies out of Duergar or Quagoth if they have encountered Vellynne inside Sunby Fortress, where there's corpses lying around that can be used to cart this sled back to 10 towns. A quick thing to note here is that Animate Dead, the 3rd level spell that can make zombies, actually doesn't work on non-humanoid creatures, but you can make an exemption for Vellynne. It isn't really a stretch and it's unlikely to be an issue. I just wanted to quickly note that. So when the characters have decided whether or not to rest, they've gotten Vellynne's aid and so on, they have to make the actual journey back to 10 towns. If they decided to rest, they'll be coming out of Sunblight Fortress to see that there's 2 burning dots on the horizon. That's Dugan's Hole and Goodmead burning, and perhaps that there's periodic flashes of flame as the dragon is flying over Easthaven, setting buildings alight and so on. Now, the first thing the characters have to do as they come out of Sunbright Fortress is that they have to get down from the mountain. It's not exactly clear how much of this is mountain travel and so on, but I've decided that there's 2 miles of mountain travel, but that the characters can also decide to go around the mountain that they're on, which is 8 miles of travel, but of course a lot safer as there's no survival checks. So that's the first decision we can sort of give the characters. Are you gonna take the fastest, most direct route, but it's also a greater risk, or you're going to take the slower but safer route? Secondly, the characters will have to cross the tundra. If the characters didn't rest before going out, they'll probably see Dugan's Hole, Goodmead, Easthaven beginning to light up as they cross the tundra, sort of giving them this feeling of, okay, the dragon is destroying, we need to hurry. What you can do here is you can either just let them come across the tundra if they're already a bit delayed, or you just want to make things a bit faster and easier. But you can also choose to have a blizzard occur here. It's a good thing if the characters are making good pace and you want to challenge them a bit. Are they going to hunker down and rest while the blizzard ravages, or are they going to try to travel through the blizzard, potentially becoming lost, or even perhaps encountering a wilderness encounter if they fail too badly instead of being separated from one another? That's of course entirely up to you. You can also just run a straight up wilderness encounter if the characters have already taken a long rest and you want to drain their resources a bit before they catch up to the dragon, have a fight with it there. Now, when the characters arrive in 10 towns, they may have a chance to actually encounter the dragon in Easthaven already if they made good speed and didn't take a long rest, because that would mean getting to Easthaven in about 8 hours, which is halfway into the dragon's destruction of the town. If that's the case, you can head directly to fighting the dragon, which I'll cover in just a minute. But if we assume that the characters don't quite catch up to the dragon quite yet, they will arrive to find this chaos in a destroyed town. If they have tired sled dogs, they may need to find new sled dogs. This could mean using an hour and making a perception check or investigation check while they're searching for sled dogs. Or if they're in a town that's not destroyed, it could mean just taking a half hour to find someone that sells sled dogs, and then of course paying for the sled dogs, unless they can convince someone that it's very imperative that they get fresh sled dogs to catch up with the dragon. You can also have the characters encounter one of these town and chaos encounters that are described in the book. It can also mean a delay of, let's say, in half an hour for each encounter, which could end up having a significant impact on when and where the characters can catch up to the dragon. Once the characters catch up with the dragon, they'll have this fight with the dragon. And here you should note that the book says that the dragon is supposed to head on to the next town when it's taking 30 or more damage, or if it's in Brinchanda, head back to Sunblight Fortress to get repairs before coming out again to destroy 10 towns. Now, I think that having it fly from town to town as it's taking damage can be quite fun. It means that the encounter with the dragon is spread out over several towns, which makes it, of course, easier for the characters as they can rest up and regroup between encountering the dragon. And it also makes for this chase, how many towns can we actually save from the dragon, last a bit longer, and that could be fun as well. What I don't like is that the dragon is supposed to head back from Brinchanda to Sunblight Fortress if it takes 30 damage there, because this sort of either splits a final epic encounter into 2. The characters almost kill the dragon, it escapes, flies back to Sunblight Fortress, but Sunblight Fortress is not in operation, so it's not going to get repairs. It's just going to be either killed by the friendly Durga there or killed by the characters when they catch up to it. Or if the fortress is still in operation, the dragon will return, become fully healed, and probably cross back over the character's head as they are going to Sunblight Fortress to kill it once and for all. So this sort of makes for a weird scenario. I think it makes a lot more sense to actually just have the characters fight the battle, a final battle with the dragon if they go up against it in Brinchanda. The book also mentions that the characters can set up defenses in the town if they get there before the dragon, but doesn't really go into detail with how that looks or how that would work. What I suggest is that the larger towns, that's Tourmaline, Easthaven, Brinchanda, and Targis, could perhaps have ballistas around town which the characters can man. You can add some extra spice to these by having Durga who are hidden in the town show up to destroy these ballista positions shortly before the dragon arrives, which gives this prelude to the final showdown with the dragon as the characters are fighting around the ballista in the town which the Durgar are trying to destroy. As for actually using the ballistas in battle, you can use the description of a ballista that are in the Dungeon Master's Guide, or you can allow a character to add their dexterity modifier to both attack and damage to make it an even more enticing option for characters. The book also describes how Vellynne can aid in the battle and gives her significant plot armor as she stays back using magic missile and other spells to sort of attack the dragon at range and keep herself alive. I think there's another way she can help by creating zombies that can attack or distract the dragon. As for actually keeping Vellynne alive, the book says that she can't die, which I think is sort of weird. You can just decide that the dragon doesn't attack her specifically, so you can keep her alive if you want to, but if she does die, it's not that Vellynne is actually irreplaceable. I think she's quite easily replaced, which is something that I'll cover in an upcoming video. As for running the actual combat with the dragon, I think it makes sense to divide it into 3 stages. The first would be an aerial assault as the dragon is flying across town. It's using its breath weapon to cause a lot of destruction, and eventually it moves within range of the characters. Now, it doesn't have to target them directly, perhaps it's just using fire on a building nearby, but it does give the characters an opportunity to make some attacks against it and get its attention. You can have this mean that they can get a round of range attacks at, let's say, a 90 feet range or something like that, before the dragon moves on to replenish its breath before coming back again. In the meanwhile, you can have an encounter happen on the ground using one of the Town and Chaos encounters, which challenges the characters and keeps the fight dynamic while the dragon is flying away to replenish its fire breath and come back. When the dragon does come back, the characters get another round of attacks on it as it's closing in, or they can use the round to take cover and really hide from its breath weapon. The dragon then makes another attack, and if it's taking enough damage, it'll move on to the next town. Or if the dragon hasn't taken enough damage, it may choose to simply fly away, replenish its breath, and go again. Or you can have it land to have this final encounter with the characters. Now, if it's going really well, it's fun, exciting, it's a close combat, and it feels epic, you probably don't need the dragon to fly on to the next town. You can simply keep it there and have the final battle at the moment if it feels right. On the other hand, the mechanics, the dragon leaves after taking 30 damage, can help us if the characters are faring really poorly, because it will leave even though it's actually defeating the characters if they just hit that threshold of dealing 30 damage. It gives you a logical explanation for why the dragon would move on even though it's so close to killing the characters. Now, you can also use stuff like townsfolk coming in to distract the dragon, or a stray ballista bolt hitting it in the rear while it's focused on the characters, and similar stuff to sort of distract the dragon, give it some other targets so you can help the characters if the battle is too difficult for them. On the other hand, you can also make the battle tougher by having crazy townsfolk show up to attack the characters as they're dealing with the dragon, or hidden Durgar coming out of hiding to attack the characters, and so on. Now, after you've run this difficult and exciting and epic battle with the dragon, there's of course also the aftermath. Depending on how quickly the characters caught up to the dragon and defeated it, there's several different outcomes for the chapter. One outcome is that they actually caught up to the dragon in Easthaven and managed to defeat it there, which means that they've saved most of 10 towns. Only Dugan's Hole and Goodmead were totally destroyed, which would be a very, very good outcome, all things considered. So this would probably mean that they will get a significant reward if you've promised them a reward of gold from the Council of Speakers, and that they'll be hailed as heroes of Icewind Dale. Now, most realistically, the characters probably didn't catch up and defeat the dragon in Easthaven, but had to defeat it in either Tourmaline, Targus, or one of the northwestern towns. If that's the case, they will probably still have saved around half of 10 towns, which is a pretty good outcome, and most of the larger towns, which of course means that a lot of people are alive because of the characters' actions. Finally, you also have the really bad outcomes, which would be the characters failing to catch up with the dragon before probably Bryn Shander, which is something that they should be able to do no matter what. This would mean that as little as 600 10-towners are left, and that more than 3,000 10-towners lie dead in the snow. This can hardly be called a victory, even if the characters do manage to destroy the dragon in the end. Now, everything we've gone over in this chapter is a lot of information and a lot to keep track of. So what I like to do is that I'll sort of play things out in my head, come up with an example of how things could look. Now, it doesn't actually have to happen like this, but simply having an idea of how things could look makes it easier for me, at least, to prepare for actually running the session. Now, there's one scenario I see where the characters do really well. They head out from Sunbright Fortress without taking a long rest, so they're making a really, really good pace. Perhaps this is because they can rest while they're being dragged across the tundra if you want them to be able to do that, or it's just that they weren't as badly hurt while fighting with Sardarok and his minions inside Sunbright. In either case, they can make good speed, coming down off the mountain quickly without getting lost, crossing across the tundra and even through a blizzard without actually wasting too much time, and that means that they can show up in East Haven while the dragon is still there. There they put up a fight, they hurt the dragon which moves on, while they can sort of hunker down and actually take this long rest that they needed sorely if they haven't already, or get fresh sled dogs or what have you. In either case, the dragon is sent packing and the characters realize, okay, we won't be able to catch it in Caer Dineval or Caer Konig, but if we cut straight across the Dwarven Valley or go through the roads through Brunchanda and up to Tourmaline, we can fight the dragon there. So they head to Tourmaline and they have another encounter with the dragon. This time they're fresh. It's an easy encounter. They're perhaps even in Tourmaline before the dragon. So they send it packing once more after dealing 30 plus damage to it. The dragon moves on and the characters can then head up to Lonelywood and encounter it again there, once more saving a lot of people as they deal even more damage to the dragon. At this point, the dragon is severely wounded and the characters will probably have spent some resources fighting the dragon twice. So when they get to it in Targos, it's an epic battle where the dragon is giving everything it has and the characters have perhaps manned ballista and have other tools ready to aid them against the dragon, and we get this epic final fight in Targos, which has stretched over multiple towns. In the end, the characters have saved thousands of lives and showed their courage in several towns, making them really feel like heroes. And I think this is a likely outcome if the characters are decently smart about it, and even if they rest before heading after the dragon, they should still be able to catch up with it in Tourmaline, Targos, Lonelywood, and so on. Now, another scenario that is also quite likely, but a lot less fun, or perhaps a lot less successful at least, is that the characters are slow getting off the mountain, they take a long rest, they don't have sled dogs, or they don't have fresh sled dogs, they refuse Vellynne's aid, and so on, so they can't even catch up to the dragon in East Haven, they won't reach it in Tourmaline either, and they won't be able to actually make a stand against it before they get to Targos. They make their stand here and they send it packing after a fight, and then they can head to Brunchanda to intercept it once more there and have a final battle with it there. This of course means that 8 of the 10 towns have been severely destroyed and that Targos and Brunchanda has also taken damage. I think this is a fairly likely outcome if the characters aren't in too much hurry or they make the wrong decisions. While it isn't a complete disaster, it is of course not the preferred outcome for anyone, including the characters, but it is fairly likely that this is also a way it could play out. Alright, so that's my video on running Chapter 4 Destruction's Light. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions or anything else, please let me know in the comments below. I try to make a habit out of responding to everything, even though it sometimes takes me a few days to actually see them. Yeah, so that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that I'll see you in the next one.